Let's talk NFL trade rumors on today's show going into training camp, as we're going to start to see some of the contract situations, spike a little bit in intensity, because if they are not resolved, that could lead to a potential holdout. And listen, holdouts during OTAs and minicamp are not a huge deal. Holdouts going into training camp, that's a different question. Now, before we get to some of the trade rumors going into training camp, which is less than 2 weeks away, if you want to sweep the Saints, like today's video, if you want to sweep the Buccaneers, type ATL. And if you want to sweep the Panthers, subscribe today. If you want to take down the entire NFC South, go a perfect 6-0, be the #1 Falcons fan on YouTube, like the video, drop an ATL, hit that sub button too. Now let's talk Hassan Reddick, an old friend of the channel, as he has made an appearance more than once at Falcons Today. But I do think that we are getting closer and closer to a potential breaking point between Reddick and the Jets. Now, the background information you need to know. Reddick was traded from the Eagles to the Jets for a 2026 conditional third-round draft pick, and since then, he has skipped all voluntary and mandatory workouts and spring practices as he is seeking a new deal. He's got 1 year left on his contract, scheduled to make $15 million, which is an absolute bargain for how productive he has been the last 4 seasons. But the Jets don't appear to be interested in extending Hassan Reddick, which is what he wanted from the Eagles. Eagles weren't interested, so they said, listen, how about you go seek a trade, find another GM that will give you that contract, and we will work out a deal because we're going to go sign Bryce Huff in free agency to replace you. I don't see this ending well. From the moment Reddick was traded to the Jets, it was a bit weird. Like, the Jets let Bryce Huff walk in free agency. He's 26 years old. He signed a 3-year, $51 million contract. Are they about to turn around, get a draft, or give away a draft pick for Hassan Reddick, and then give him a similar 3-year, $50 million contract for a guy 4 years older? That seems borderline malpractice or a fireable offense. Like, unless they just had this crazy gut feeling that Bryce Huff was about to fall off a cliff and Hassan Reddick is only entering the best few years of his career, who in their right mind would give up a draft pick to get an older player and give that guy the same contract that they could have given one of their own who is 4 years younger? Right from the jump, I was like, why are the Jets doing this when they could have just saved that draft pick and signed their own guy who was a UDFA coming up their farm system who was awesome last year? Like, none of it made sense to me. And it continues to not make any sense to me. Now, Zack Rosenblatt from The Athletic, he recently did an article about Hassan Reddick and the Jets, and I wanted to share some of the snippets with you. He wrote, Reddick held out from voluntary workouts this spring and then skipped mandatory minicamp this week as he seeks a raise on his current contract. It's a suboptimal start to his Jets career, especially, and listen to this part here, since the team was under the impression he intended to participate in the offseason program. Huh? Team was under the impression that he was going to participate in the offseason program? Where did they get that impression? Surely it wasn't from Reddick, because Reddick has had no intention of doing anything without a new contract. But somehow, the Jets missed that. Because look at what else Rosenblatt wrote. When the Jets acquired Reddick, they did not intend to redo his deal. At least initially, the expectation by many was that Reddick would play out this season on his current contract. You didn't do your research on the guy you gave up a third-round draft pick for? You just saw a good player on the market, made the deal, and didn't look at the tiny text that we all scroll by and then click agree? That's okay for us to do, but not you, the GM, the lawyers. That's your job. I act like I'm a Jets host right now. You didn't do the research that your new DN wanted a new contract, and you just hoped that he'd show up to shit and that he'd be okay with playing out the last year of his deal? Were you living in Bikini Bottom? This just makes no sense. But this is the New York Jets organization we're talking about. And a lot of what they do makes no sense. So let's go down a bit of a timeline of the Hassan Reddick trade. So April 1st, he is traded to the New York Jets. May 20th, first day of organized team activities, Reddick ain't there. All right, it's voluntary. We can make do with that. June 4th, mandatory minicamp. He ain't there. And this is probably the weirdest one of all. June 10th, they have a team photo shoot. Media days. He ain't there. He was the only player not present. This is starting to smell like a Bo Callahan situation. Like, even Aaron Rodgers, who was doing a whole bunch of drugs during this part of the offseason, was there on June 10th. Where was Hassan Reddick? We have ourselves, in my opinion, a true standoff. And as we go into training camp, I think there is more than just a 1, 2, 3% chance that this continues to spiral in a negative way. Because every indication from Hassan Reddick has shown us he ain't showing up without a new deal. And from the Jets' perspective, it would look so dumb to give him the same contract that the Eagles gave Bryce Huff, who came from the Jets and is 4 years younger. And you add in Hassan Reddick turning 30 years old. When you look at the New York Jets, like GM Douglas, he came over from the Philadelphia Eagles, like brain trust. They don't give 30-plus-year-olds big contracts very often. They only give that for special players. And not that Reddick isn't special, but he hasn't even suited up one game for the Jets yet. Do you think they're going to give him a fat extension before he even plays a single game for them? I don't, which makes the whole trade even more puzzling. So, my opinion is Hassan Reddick wants to join this list of names and faces on screen. He wants to be one of the top 10 highest paid pass rushers in football. Why? Because he is a top 10 pass rusher. Like, it's not always a direct correlation of where you are paid is what your rank is in the NFL, but he's making $15 million right now. I'm guessing he wants to join around the $20 to $25 million club. Like, he's probably looking at Danielle Hunter, Montez Sweat. He's in that same tier of those players. And the stats back it up. Look at the last 4 years. 11 sacks, 16 sacks, 11 sacks, 12 and a half sacks. So he's got a great argument that he should be making more than what he's currently making. Now, the age is working against him, and that's ultimately what's holding him back. But Hassan Reddick, make no mistake, has been one of the best pass rushers for the last 4 years. Like, look at where he ranks in sacks since 2020. 50.5 coming in at 4. Only behind Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett, and TJ Watt. So yeah, there's a good reason Reddick wants to get a pay bump. He's got a good argument, and I just don't understand why the Jets traded for him. So with all that being said, Atlanta, you have an opportunity to toss the New York Jets a lifeline and send them a draft pick. Sure, they're going to look silly. They gave up a third-round draft pick for a guy that would never play it down for them, and they'll probably only get a fifth-round draft pick in return because the Falcons have him by the balls. But at least it's better than nothing. Because at the moment, that's what they're getting from Haason Reddick. Nothing. He ain't showing up. He's skipping photo day. That's the easiest day. So, take advantage of the dumb Jets and get a guy who is fourth in sacks since 2020 for a fifth-round draft pick. Please. And let him join the likes of this front five. Take out Lorenzo Carter. Slap in Mr. What's his name? I'm blanking already. Hassan Reddick. Get Arnold Ebiketie, Zack Harrison, David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, and Hassan Reddick. And that is a front five that can do more than just tread water. That is a front five that can be one of the better pass rushing units in football with the insertion of one of the best pass rushers in football over the last half decade. So, I'll turn it over to you. Should Atlanta trade for Reddick? Give me a T for trade or give me a P for pass. We've got two more trades I want to look at here revolving around the NFC South. I know I'm taking up a lot of your time, but I do want to know what your thoughts are on this idea. Some other NFC South players now that could be on the move. Let's start with Bucs wide receiver Chris Godwin, the Robin to Mike Evans' Batman. So Chris Godwin, I saw, was mentioned in a Bleacher Report article as a potential bold trade candidate / idea during training camp. Now, Godwin signed a 3-year, $60 million deal, and this is the final year of that contract. He recently turned 28 years old, so he still has some good amount of gas left in the tank. But the Buccaneers going with wide receiver Jalen McMillan, in round 3 out of Washington. It's raised some eyebrows down in Tampa about Godwin's future with the Bucs. Ultimately, I don't think we're going to see Chris Godwin get dealt because that seems like a dumb thing to do. And the Bucs haven't been a dumb franchise. They haven't. But if they are serious about trying to keep the hot hand rolling of kind of capturing lightning in a bottle with Baker last year and then paying him, doesn't seem like it's a bright idea than to take away his number 2 wide receiver and bank on a 3rd-round rookie to be a really ascending guy in year 1. Godwin, over the last 4 years, been a little bit up and down. Like, last year, he was still a 1,000-yard receiver, but the touchdowns weren't quite there, just 2 scores. His receptions did go down from 104 to 83, but I still think Chris Godwin is one of the better wide receiver 2s in the National Football League. Now, before we look at another NFC South player that could be on the move soon, some trivia for everyone watching. Which Falcon is this? From 2011 to 2014, he was a Buccaneer. From 2015 to 17, he was a Falcon. Then a brief stint with the Patriots, back to Atlanta, and then ended his career in Cleveland. We will reveal the answer at the end of the show. Which Falcon is this? All right, second and final NFC South player on the move, cornerback Marshon Lattimore. There's been some chatter about Latimore getting moved, and we'll unpack it all in just a second here. But if you want to get some more Falcons gear in your closet, go to chatsports.com/ATL combo. You can get this Falcons hat and t-shirt combo 45% off. So as training camp gets here, and then the preseason and the regular season, these sales are going to go away, and you're going to be paying 45% more. So save future you some money because you know you're going to want to get some new gear in your life once the season starts. And save some buckaroos at chatsports.com/ATL combo. So Marshon Lattimore, the context surrounding him. He's got 3 years left on his deal, and financially, it doesn't make a ton of sense for the Saints to move on. Like, there'd be a $31.2 million dead cap hit awaiting them. There's not a whole bunch of cap savings to be had because the Saints were the Saints, and they just restructured everyone's contract and kicked the can down the road, and they don't have any playoff wins to show for it, and now they got to pay the price of that. But Lattimore has been largely unavailable for them the last 2 years. He's missed 17 games, missed 7 games last year, 10 games the season before that. He's getting up there a little bit in the age column, 28 years old, so I still think he can play at a high level. I don't think we'll see Lattimore get dealt before training camp or during training camp, but I do think we could see the Saints shopping Marshon Lattimore as we get closer to the NFL trade deadline. I think the Saints are going to kind of stink this year, and Lattimore could be a good value chip to a team that's feeling like they're just one DB away, maybe had some injuries at that position. We've seen cornerbacks get moved at the NFL trade deadline, so keep an eye on Lattimore getting dealt at that point. He still has been one of the better DBs in football, even if he's been suffering from injuries lately. Like, you can look at his stats over the last 4 years, 2 interceptions combined the last 2 seasons, pass breakups galore, of course, solid PFF grades. Like, as much fun as it is to shit talk the Saints for Falcons fans, Lattimore is still, a quality, dependable corner. But the Saints do have a lot of young players at that position. They drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry, so I think they could be, sizing him up to start early. And if that's the case, that could push out a veteran. But I don't think we'll see that push during training camp. Maybe in the middle of the season with the NFL trade deadline, and if the team's not playing super well. All right, our trivia question from earlier, the answer is defensive end Adrian Claiborne. Played with Atlanta from 2015 to 2017, and then again in 2019. All right, that will do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see everyone later.